Hi everyone, welcome back to Domina Chase's Humanistic BDSM. Yay! So this is going to make my little pets a little sad, but not too sad, okay? This is probably going to be our last video, maybe unless we get motivated again later on this week to record. We don't know. No promises. But yeah. So we are going to get on to our
last video before you leave. We should clarify, not like last video ever.
Yeah, not like I'm not like gonna like kill him or anything.
Or just stop recording.
Or stop recording. No, like we're gonna record, but
we won't be here together.
We won't
doing
be
this.
Yes, we won't. This is the last time we I'll be able to do this on video. Well, I mean on public video. Anyway, so So part as our commitment to our patrons, even though it's the very last day of the second to last day of the month, we got that. So our contributor is at the level.
Sure.
Our $15 level Patreon member, who is named Mama Bear, had a question. Okay, so you read the question.
Okay, so I am female, 45 bi, and very possessive of my slave/pup, who is 24-year-old female, and she has never had any penetrative intercourse with a man, but wants to try it. We are a very happily married couple and love our life together for the past 6 years. But there are a few things she would like to try that I either am just too possessive to share or don't like. How do you handle needs or fetishes, etc., that your sub has that you can't or don't want to fulfill?
Okay, so today's topic, I guess, will be like compersion?
Yes, compersion and jealousy.
Compersion and jealousy. Okay, first let's go over some definitions. So jealousy, I think, is pretty much straightforward. It's when you feel, I don't know how to say jealousy. It's like you feel upset because someone has something that you don't have, whether it's an object or an experience, like a person even. That's jealousy. And what's compersion, Stinky?
Compersion is the opposite of jealous. Instead of being upset or possessive of someone, you feel good because you know that they are having good experiences, even if those experiences are not with you.
Yes. So
it's kind of like compassion, but this term specifically relates to feelings about your partner while they're with someone else.
Yes. So the reason why I want to talk about compersion, that's what it seems like our Mama Bear is asking about. So where do you want to start with compersion? We started what it is. How do we...
Well, no, I think what would be better is to start with jealousy, and because that's really where the problem lies. Because to get to compersion, you have to overcome the jealousy.
And I actually would like to slightly modify, maybe not... You don't have to get rid of jealousy. I feel like that's...
Not get rid of, but you have to get past it. You have to get over it.
True. Because the one thing I like to say is that our feelings are valid. Our actions are not always valid. So, if there's someone that you love and you care about, it's very valid if, they're having fun in a way that you can't provide, or the way that you don't want to provide, or that they only can find that fun, or I think sometimes even more insidiously, if it is something you can provide, but they just want it with someone else.
I have totally been jealous of you.
Of me?
Yeah.
Why?
Because.
Okay, did you tell me later?
Because I want to do all the things with you.
Oh, we want to do all the things with me. But sometimes you can't do all the things with me.
I can't always do all the things.
Sometimes he gets jealous, like when I'm on the other side of the road, and he gets jealous because he can't go to my shows, and we can't go out and...
Can't go to parties together.
Can't go to the parties together. Nope. Can't go to my workshops. Nope. Yeah, you do get jealous. He does get jealous. But here's the thing: is that I think that's actually a pretty good segue. Is that you still feel that jealousy somewhat, but you also feel compersion. That's why I think the thing that's the that that difference that we're trying to like find that in between, because I think that you don't necessarily have to get people. I feel sometimes they push themselves too hard, that like, oh, I shouldn't be jealous, I need to like really work on this, I'm a terrible person because I have these jealous feelings. And it's not. You're able to still feel jealous and also feel compersion for your partner at the same time.
Yeah, because getting past jealousy, I don't think means you're getting rid of it. It means you're acknowledging it, but you're dealing with it in a healthy way.
So, how do we? So first, how do we? First, you have to be honest with yourself.
Yes.
Step number one is you have to be honest with yourself. You're like, no, I'm not jealous. I'm not jealous. That's not how I feel. This. You're definitely not going to be able to work past jealousy if you don't first acknowledge jealousy. That is step number one. And it doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person who cares about somebody else, to be quite frank. This whole like, oh, I never get jealous, I call bullshit. If you don't get jealous, you don't care at all. Note, okay, let's not go with like the toxic side, like, oh, they're jealous over me, like they must really care. Let's not take it to that toxic level. Okay, I'm saying that if they don't experience
Right.
on some micro level any jealousy.
And also, people can get jealous over different things. What
Right.
one person feels jealous about, another person might not care at all.
Right.
Doesn't mean they don't care about the person. It's just they may be focused on different issues, activities, whatever, you know.
like my pet would not be jealous if I'm hanging out with my kinky best friend who's a dominatrix. Like, well, it maybe just we're on the other side of the planet and he's jealous of everybody. But like, aside from that part, but he would feel a little bit more jealous if it was like, oh, that's someone who's someone who identifies as a puppy and would like to be your puppy, even though they're not my puppy. He would, oh, they identify as puppy. You would feel more jealous, I feel.
Maybe it depends.
It depends. Well, you also trust me too.
Yeah.
Well, I can get him to power.
I think a play party is a better example.
Yes.
Like,
I was
yeah, because you're going there theoretically to potentially play with someone,
right.
And then I can't be there. I want to be there.
You
I
want
want
to
to
be
play
there.
with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor little pets. But then, so how do you deal with that then? Because we've actually had this exact situation happen where I've been to play parties on literally on the other side of the planet without you.
Well, first, like you said, it was being honest. Like, yes, I am jealous. And also, with that, acknowledging that this doesn't make me a terrible person. Right? Because if you think you're bad for being jealous, then it's going to be pretty hard to get over that. You're going to, you're either just going to stew in it, I think, or you're just going to, try and squash it down and repress it, you know, and try and pretend it isn't there. And I don't think either of those are going to get you the result you need.
Right, you're not going to be able to have an honest conversation with yourself, much less with your partner.
Right.
So I think the next thing that you do is first you acknowledge it, then you tell me about it, and then you kind of ask hey, what exactly is it that makes you jealous?
Exactly. And, I think a lot of times it relates to, insecurities we have with ourselves, which, again, is okay because we all have them. And, again, they're all about different things, which is why people sometimes manifest that jealousy over different things. And I think part of it is very personal, what do I feel insecure, either about myself or about our relationship, or some of it can just be some societal programming. There are things we
Like,
are
it doesn't
raised,
actually bother me, but the society tells me it should bother me.
right. Like we're raised in a very, most of us are raised in a pretty monogamous, heteronormative society, where there's just certain things we're taught growing up. These are the expectations, and you know, I found that sometimes, like, especially when I was younger, there are things I wouldn't think twice about. And then, sometimes other people would be like, well, doesn't that bother you? Why should it bother you? And then they start throwing out all these things, and you're like, wait, am I supposed to be concerned about
Mm-hmm.
this? So you've got to figure out what those root issues are and then address them. And I think you have to address it, both with yourself first. You have to
Right.
really, this is something you have to kind of think about on your own a bit, but then you also have to talk about it with your partner.
Ooh, so to reference an earlier video, we did a video about how we conduct our long distance relationship when we are long distance, and I think that also comes down. That's also part of the aggressive honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And aggressive honesty is not just honesty with your partner, which I think is what we mostly talked about, but aggressive honesty like with yourself. So first acknowledging that you're jealous. What is it that bothers you about it? And that hurts, to be perfectly honest, because you're deep diving into things that make you insecure, that hurt you. It could even be past trauma. I mean, you and I have had discussions like this. Like, I've had past trauma. Like, I and I think the hardest part with it's something that's traumatic is you don't necessarily have it in the forefront of your mind. Usually trauma, you try to like kind of like push it back and then push it back in your head, and you're like, I don't know why this, it usually comes out as, I don't know why this just bothers me, or I just don't like it, or like it's just not right. Well, if you have the more vague of an answer your initial reaction is, I feel that the more likely it is trauma. It's not always, but more likely to be trauma, or you're just not that in touch with your feelings. But if you are and you're like, I don't know, I just don't like it, I don't like it, it's more likely to be trauma. So I think that's when you and your partner really need to have these like very honest conversations about it, and it takes time. That's another thing. This is why when it comes to negotiation, actually we haven't done a video on it yet, but one day we should. We have many videos we need to make. Like talking, like introducing a new partner, a vanilla partner especially, to BDSM. This, like, like for instance in this scenario of how one of the partners wants to experience penetrative sex, it shouldn't be like in the moment, like, hey, there's someone next door who like is like hard, and we're like, I'm ready to jump on his dick, like like, so is this cool with you? Like, that's not I mean, yes, that means kudos to you that you're still having a conversation waiting to get consent, but there's that heightened sense of like, oh, what, I don't have time to process it. So I think that's also that's another thing is you need to dedicate time and a space away from the actual thing, and not conflate the two. Or let's say like a more like extreme case, like let's say this couple, they were having a threesome, right? And because there's other ways to have threesomes, it doesn't have to have it involve penetrative sex. And it can't be just like, oh, like the penis is about to insert, like, hey, can I, like, that's not the time to do that unless it's prearranged. But generally I don't think that's such a good idea. I always have a lot of these caveats because I don't know your relationship. That might be your kink, is like, surprise, I'm doing the sexual thing. But unless that's explicitly stated.
Yeah, you should, even then, like, you should have at least negotiated that
right,
part.
You should have negotiated that part.
That you're gonna spring things by surprise, because then that's not okay.
That's not okay. So I think just it takes time and takes patience. And I think that both parties should be willing to give a little bit, you know, like.
Well, I think we can use our case as like a bit of an example here, you know?
What are you thinking about specifically?
Well, going back to the play party example.
Okay.
Because you asked me, like...
I did. Oh, yeah, I forgot about this. Okay, you explain, because I forgot.
We had a whole conversation about this. So, like, we kind of went through those steps. I was like, yes, I'm feeling jealous. And you asked me, like, why are you feeling jealous? And we talked about it, and, like... For me, the biggest issue was like, we haven't even been to a play party together yet. And now you're going to go there and you're going to be with someone else. We haven't been able to do this. But I can't go with you because we're on literal opposite sides of the world, 12 time zones apart.
Right.
And so then that led to a deeper discussion. And you asked, like, well, what are the specific things that bother you? Like, would it bother you if I played with this person? You know, would it bother you if I did these specific things? You know, and we kind of, like, I mean, I won't say it was a great degree of specificity, but we kind of set some limits of, like, these are things that, you know, maybe I'm not totally okay with, but I'm more comfortable with this, and this stuff over here really, really bothers me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a very helpful discussion, you know. It kind of helped frame things and give an idea of, like, okay, you know, even if I'm not totally cool with this, it's not something that's going to, like, break us either, you know.
Exactly. And also, too, I'd like to point out, see, this is what makes us Humanistic BDSM. You and I have seen this in other BDSM spaces where... Honestly, right about now, I would get slammed like, oh, she's not a real dominatrix. She's not a real dom. Why is she asking her sub his opinion? Like, he just should just shut up and be told. And like, but this is a relationship. This is an enduring DS relationship. And while, yes, I actually could just say like, no, I order you to be okay with it.
But then you've just given me an impossible order.
Exactly. And I could break our DS relationship. So I think that's something that we need to also point out. If you read or see anything conflicting, this is where Humanistic BDSM deviates from a lot of other BDSM spaces. I'm not saying every other space is like that, but there is a lot of BDSM spaces like that don't give their S-types, their beloved slaves, that space to talk and to negotiate. Just because I feel that my job as a dominant is to take care of my sub, and just be completely dismissive of his feelings. That's not very good taken care of, is it? No, it'd be a sad little puppy. Yeah, you'd be a sad puppy. So, I think those are pretty good. How about, do we have specific...
Well, to add on to that bit about, like, our whole discussion and negotiation, I think sometimes just putting these feelings and issues into words and being able to vocalize them helps, even if the issue isn't solved.
Right.
Because after our conversation, I felt a lot more comfortable than I had beforehand, even though, you know, I don't know that necessarily solved anything. It's not like any amount of conversation was going to teleport me across the world so that we could go to the party together, you know.
Right.
But being able to voice those, having those opinions considered and respected, it made me feel better. It made me feel more secure in our relationship. And then that helped lessen those feelings of jealousy and insecurity.
And I think another aspect of that is that since you were able to clearly articulate the things that you were insecure, that were bothering you, and I mirrored them back to you. I said, this is what it sounds like. That's actually a counseling technique. So when you hear something, it sounds like you're saying this. So if you say it in your own words, so then that your partner knows that you actually took in that information and absorbed it enough to the point that you were able to say, hey, it sounds like this is what you're saying in your own words.
And also make sure you two are on the same page. Because
Exactly.
if you reframe it, but it comes out wrong, and we're like,
ooh.
oh, nope, don't, yeah, there.
Our low bat hit, but we're still here. We still got 20%, so don't worry.
Yeah.
But the reason why I bring that up is I think what also made you comfortable, a lot more comfortable, is that since you knew that I understood, I was now going to act and operate with cognizance. Like, I am not going to push that boundary. I'm not going to even, I'm less likely to accidentally cross that boundary, because I would consider, because obviously I can't ask him every permutation of well, what about this? If I hit someone 5 times versus 6 times, no, you can't ask all those little details. But maybe I would know that if it's something you're paying it's too much attention on one person. I don't know. I don't think you said that, but let's say use that as an example. But if, let's say, that was something that if you were worried about it, then I would know oh, okay, then that means maybe I should play with 2 or 3 different people, have shorter sessions rather than just have one person I'm having a 2-hour long session with, if he had expressed that as something that made him insecure. So even though that hadn't been something we talked about, that would be oh, okay, I'm gonna be a little bit more cognizant of that. So do we have specific, for Mama Bear, do we have specific advice for Mama Bear that we would like to share about her specific situation?
Well, I mean, obviously we can't know exactly where all the insecurities lie. I mean, I'm guessing part of it is just the fact that, she's talking about penetrative sex with a man, and maybe there's some fear that this is, it's something different that she can't necessarily give to her pet. What did she say, pet?
We're reading it off his phone because we're both too blind to read it off his computer screen where it's tiny.
Yeah.
La 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 la, slave pup.
Pup. Okay. And so, because even if she uses toys and stuff, there may be a feeling, well, this isn't the same. I can't give her this.
Right.
And that's valid, because if you could give her exactly that, then why have it with anyone else? I mean, which actually, that's not entirely true.
Right, because that's what I said.
Sometimes just being with a different person isn't an experience in and of itself, even if you're doing the exact same things. But I think that's probably where a lot of that insecurity is.
And what I would talk about is maybe, kind of getting into the details, honestly, because I think that's something that we've done. This time what I'm thinking of is I was in San Francisco. I think this is what made it harder, because I was in San Francisco and you were on the East Coast. So we're in the same country at least, but still not together. And I went to a play party, and I think I modified it by okay, I can't take you on the phone up into the dungeon because that's not cool, but I can talk to you on the phone, and I'm hey, I'll introduce you to my mentor on my phone. So it made him feel a little bit more part of the experience. So I think that if you talk about specific scenarios, Mama Bear, maybe you want to be in the room. That's okay. Maybe you're one of the things, maybe you're afraid. The question doesn't indicate if you are poly or open. Maybe you're afraid for the safety of your slave or your pup, which I think is very valid. Just the sheer power differential between the average man and the average woman is actually comparable to the power differential between the average man and the average NFL player. That might be something. Or maybe this might be someone that you want to be friends with. Get to know the person who owns the penis. Because I just actually realized we're assuming the person with the penis is a he. Might not be a he. Could be they. Could be non-binary. We don't know. we're just talking. It just seems like penile penetrative.
Well, she did say with a man.
With a man. Okay. So, but like I always want to try to use inclusive language so that we can teach be an example to our viewers about inclusive language. Because what if they meet someone who's non-binary that they're comfortable with? Or the flip side of that is maybe you don't want to know who the person is. Like, go find some strange.
Right. And I've seen it both ways, where some people are more comfortable if it's a friend, if it's someone they know, because then they trust that this person is just going to be a one-off experience, and they're not going to try and like cause any friction within the relationship,
or just safety, like I said.
But on the other hand, some people feel the opposite. They'd prefer it be a stranger, because then you're not going to have repeated interactions with that person.
It's not going to get awkward. We're going to see them again, like at the potluck. Like, oh, I don't want my casserole next to theirs. Like, what?
But the other thing too is I think Mama Bear's pup needs to do kind of like you did, and do a lot of those, like, provide a lot of reassurances and affirmations, that like this isn't a threat, like, you're still the important person, this isn't going to change things, so this definitely needs to be very much a two-way street here, an exchange of ideas and thoughts, and,
right.
So
okay, so as a recap, so the first thing is acknowledge. Just acknowledge the jealousy, because then that's how you can get to compersion. 2 is be honest with yourself. Oh, wait, so that be honest with your partner and communicate with them. 3 is do the communication way before and like outside of that situation. Do not conflate those two. That's gonna create a mess. And then I think 4, just come to the negotiation with an open mind and be willing to give a little, because I think when you start off with a little compersion, it's easier to have more compersion.
And I think another thing is just to keep in mind that even if you have some hesitation about it, maybe some negative feelings, this is something that, your partner wants, that's going to make them feel good. And, I think most people want their partners to feel good. They want them to be happy. They want them to have good experiences. And sometimes it's just reframing that, right? Like, if you think about it, you don't get upset every time your partner does something without you. If they go out with friends and they come back and they say, oh, we had the best time at, I don't know, the fair or whatever, usually you don't get upset, and you're like, oh, well, I wasn't at the fair. I mean, maybe you do, I don't know.
Maybe you do. Maybe that's your thing. Maybe you really like fairs.
Maybe the fair is your thing, and that's the thing you're supposed to do together.
You can have sex with anybody else, but a fair without me? What the hell? Like, you never know.
But assuming that's not like the thing that's, that really gets you, that you're supposed to do together, most people be like, oh, that's great. I'm really glad you had a good time with your friends, know? Because you want that for your partner. So it's just taking that same outlook and applying it to a situation where you normally wouldn't be like, oh, yes, I want you to have great sex with another person.
Right. And, I forgot what I was going to say. What I was going to say. Also, too, one of the great things about having a BDSM structure in your relationship is you already have a built-in mechanism to take care of each other when something hard happens or something that spikes your adrenaline and then all of a sudden comes crashing down. And what does that sound like? A type of drop. And then you have aftercare. And that's perfectly valid. If it's still, even if you can still feel challenged by it, even though you have compersion, you can still feel challenged by it. and it's very emotionally draining and physically draining, it's okay. Have aftercare.
It's not just for BDSM scenes.
And it's not just for the person, and it's not in this case for Mama Bear who's giving the compersion, but for the other partner to receive affirmation, to say like, no, I'm not a terrible person because I went and had this experience, even with your consent. Because same thing that happens sometimes, like, you know, you've done things that I agreed to, but that's like slightly out of our normal roles, and you're like, oh my God, was I a bad pet? Did I do? I'm like, no, we're no bad pets. I liked it. It was a good thing. And again, one final thought. This is something that, you know, I've had to deal with this issue with myself, with jealousy and finding my way through compersion. And for me, what really helped in those challenging times was to tell myself and to tell my pet that, you know, it's not every day that a dom gets to give her pet the world, right? So yeah, I think that's kind of that's my personal advice. That's what's worked for me for challenging situations. And I can't take credit for that one. I actually stole that line from Coneheads. It's at the end. Yeah. You didn't know that, did you? He thought it was like all profound and shit, but no.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
Right? But it is. It's there at the end. He literally says to his daughter, at the end, it's not every day you get to give your child the world. Remember? See, I completely ruined the mystique of it. But whatever. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that's it. We've been yapping for like half an hour.
Yeah. The only other thing I will say is, so I don't know, like we said before, we don't know what the structure of the relationship is, if they're poly, open, whatever. But if you want to do more reading on this, there's a lot of websites that are focused on polyamory that typically have a lot of good resources for dealing with jealousy and techniques to help yourself, you know, just walk yourself through that and deal with it in a healthy way so that you can feel that compersion for your partner.
And I think you're at an advantage, honestly, being already in a BDSM relationship, because you already have that mechanism for having negotiation and that communication. You're already used to it. Whereas vanilla couples, they don't necessarily have that. So, okay, so this is the time where we plug things. So depending on when you see this, if you see this within the next 48 hours or so, on August 3rd, in U.S. time at 10 p.m. we will be...
U.S. time? You know the U.S. has more than one time
okay,
zone.
Mountain time. Okay, it's September. It's September 3rd, not August 3rd. I'm time traveling. September 3rd in the United States, because it's September 4th in the Philippines. Because we have an international group. We've mostly reached 1K, yay! 1,000 members in our Facebook group. I think
probably will by then.
I'm sure we probably will by then. I think right now we're at like 980 is like close enough, right? So yeah, that we're gonna do our Q&A. It's gonna be my last night for like a year. Oh, I know. So make sure that you, if you're not already part of the group, go ahead and join the group. But we will be doing the
group being Humanistic BDSM.
Sorry, Humanistic BDSM inclusive as fuck kink on Facebook. But we will be doing the Q&A here on YouTube so that everyone can join in and not just our group members. However, if you are a group member, there will be a post and you can ask your question in advance, and the top 3 questions with the most likes, top 3 questions most likes will be answered with our discretion, because I'm not going to give you my address or social security number. I'm not answering that question, obviously. And then, so yes, and as I'm not sure, you may or may have not have noticed, this was a direct answer to a question that we got from one of our contributors through Patreon. So if you would like to have a question answered directly by Patrick and I, or Patrick or I, Go ahead and go over to patreon.com. It's should be just Domina Chase. There's a link somewhere in my YouTube profile. And is that anything else?
No, I think that's good.
Okay, I think that's good. All right. Bye, everyone. We're going to go sleepies. Good night. Bye. Bye. Bye.